Yo, what's going on? Welcome back. So when it comes to sampling, you probably know that I really like sampling from records and really like sampling from vinyl because it's just something that really inspires me. It's not necessarily about the sound quality or the crackles, which a lot of people are really into, and I think that's cool as well. But for me, it more so is just about the workflow. It kind of inspires me and it helps me find new samples because I really have to go out and look for something physical. That being said, I'm not at all against digital sampling, and I've seen a lot of people in the comments talking about how they sort of dig for samples digitally and how that works in their workflow. So today I'm going to try that out and I'm going to see how I can incorporate digital samples for the first time ever into my workflow. And I'm also going to try to look at how we can make those samples sound a little bit more analog and sound more sort of like a lo-fi sample, especially when you have like a wave format, let's say, sample. So to start sampling digitally, I went to TrackLib. I've seen a bunch of ads for it, and it's sort of this place where you can go online, sample digitally, dig digitally, and then you can license the samples directly through that service, which is really cool. That allows you to legally release all your tracks and not have to worry about licensing issues. As you've probably seen, I really like sampling soundtracks, library music, that type of music, especially Italian library music, and there is some of that on TrackLib, so that was the first thing I went to. I'll just play a little snippet of the sample that I grabbed, and then we can record it into the MPC and then make a beat with it. Let's do it. So the sample is called Felicia My Love. I'll just play a little snippet of it, of the piece that I'm going to be taking from, and then we can start making a beat out of it. But like I said, since this is a digital sample, I want to try to make sure I can make it sound a little bit analog just to keep it sounding a little bit less clean. And the way I'm going to be doing that today is something that I've done a couple times and I really like the effect it can give, and that is I'm going to run the sample through a little cassette player. The one reason I really like the idea of this too is you can find these things for like $4 at a used store or a market or something like that, and then cassettes you can buy on Amazon or anywhere online, and they're usually super cheap too. So this is a really cheap way that rather than buying like a lo-fi effects pedal or a cassette simulator, you can literally just buy a little cassette player and record directly into that, and then record that cassette directly into the MPC, and it's a really cost-effective way to do that. So first thing I'll do is I'll record the sample into the cassette player, and then I'll record the cassette player directly into the MPC. Let's see how it sounds. So I've hit record on the cassette player. Now I'm just going to play the sample. We're not going to be able to hear it because it's recording into the cassette, but it is now recording the track, and then we'll be able to hear it once I record that into the MPC. So I now have the cassette player plugged directly into the MPC, and I can press record on the MPC and start playing the cassette. The one limitation about this cassette player specifically is that it will only play in mono, so I'll have to record the sample in mono, but there are lots of cheap cassette players that do stereo, so that's just a limitation of my system specifically, but let's record it. So now I have that cassette recording recorded onto the MPC. So now I'm gonna trim it up, I'll make some chops out of it, then we can start making the main chop for a beat. Let's do it. So I now have the sample chopped up and I have it on the 16 pads. I did sort of just a region sort of chop, or more like a BPM chop. But what I wanna do before I record a pattern with this sample is I actually wanna lower the semi a little bit because I think it'll just sound better with this track. So let's do that. And I'll put that down to maybe -3. Actually, we like the way just that loop sounds. I think that might sort of even be the main part of my beat. So I have the BPM set to 91 on this beat. Let's lay down that little loop and then we can add some drums to it, and then we can see if we can come up with some additional parts for it as well. Let's do it. And then I have some drums already loaded up on the pads as well. They're pretty sort of classic hip-hop sounding drums, and I'm going to try to keep it a pretty simple drum beat, or at least a pretty classic drum beat to match this sample. First thing I'm going to do is just take the hi-hat, and I'll do 16 levels of velocity across the pads with that hi-hat. That way I can just give it a little bit of of variability and texture with the hi-hat itself. I'm also going to turn off quantization for this whole drum pattern, just because I want to make sure that it sounds sort of live and has that human element to it. Let's do it. I like the way that this drum pattern and the sample are pairing up, but what I do want to do is put a sidechain compressor on the sample, and I'll have that chained by the kick drum. The reason I'm going to do that is I think it will really sort of feed into this lo-fi feel that we got with the cassette player. So I'll add in that sidechain and we'll see how that sounds. Okay, I think that sidechain add a lot to this as well. Let's go back to the sample and see if we can come up with a secondary pattern. That way we won't just have that 2-bar loop going over and over again. We'll have something that we can sort of flip between. Let's do it. I really like how this track's coming along, and it's coming together pretty quickly, which is super exciting. And I think what we can do now is add in that bass line, really push those low ends a little bit and give it that real hip hop feel. So let's add a bass line in, we'll see what we can do with that. I think this beat's in a pretty good spot. I just want to lastly show how much I think running the sample through the cassette player had an effect on the beat. I recorded the sample both through the cassette as well as just directly from TrackLib. I then also just made the beat with both recordings. That way we can hear the two and compare what they sound like. And I think you'll probably be a little bit surprised by how much of an effect it actually had. So first I'll play the beat made with just a regular recording, and then I'll play it with the cassette, and you can hear the comparison between the two and how much it really sort of gave it this lo-fi sound. It cut off a lot of the highs and really muddied some of the sound, which made it sound really cool. Everything other than how the recording was done, one with the cassette, one not, everything else is the exact same. Both the effects, the bass, all the drums are the exact same. So the only thing that's going to be different is that recording method, and that's the only thing that's going to cause a sound difference as well. So here's a quick comparison. Here's the beat not through cassette. And then here it is with the cassette. I'll go back to just no cassette. Way cleaner, way less compressed. Here's the cassette sound. And like I said, only difference was that recording method. But I really hope you liked how the beat turned out. I really appreciate you hanging out. Psyched to see you again. And if you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what you want to see in a future video. Appreciate you guys so much. Love you. Thank you for hanging out. Peace.